And welcome back. Now, the Office of the Registrar of Labour Relations says it is now illegal to embark on a strike action before conducting a secret ballot of members. Now, the law has become obligatory and trade unions are expected to effect necessary amendments to their constitutions. And the trade unions, as you can imagine, are not happy about the new law, saying it will only lead to more unprotected strikes. Thembinkosi Mkhaliphi is the Chief Director of Labour Relations at the Department of Labour, and Lerato Madumo Gova is President of the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. Thanks to both of you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Sakina.
Mr. Mkhaliphi, I'm going to start with you to talk about, this law now that makes it illegal to embark on a strike action without first balloting members of unions. Why? What motivated this new law?
Well, let's explain first that there's always been a requirement for a ballot. It's been there since 1995. The only difference that the law has introduced is that ballot must be secret. And that's the difference. And the court has already taken a decision on this issue where NUMSA went on strike, wanted to go on strike without balloting. And they did not have the provision in their constitution that requires a secret ballot. And the court said that strike would be unprocedural and not protected.
So why is there a need for that balloting process to be done in secret?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt in this country, violence plays a part in forcing sometimes workers to take action that they are not prepared to take. And we wanted to ensure that when workers go on strike, they go on strike because they've taken a conscious decision through a secret ballot. Now, if workers vote to go on strike through a secret ballot, they've got nothing to fear. The law will protect them.
Lerato, from a trade union perspective, what does this mean for you?
Look, I think it's very important to note that secret balloting is just another tactic to try and stifle the power that unions have. That's no secret about it. Historically, and actually in the law, it is provided for that there are procedures to follow for a union to actually embark on a strike. I think it's very ingenious for the Department of Labour to want to assume that they are protecting the workers. Look, strike is the only tool that workers have to actually push their force and their power in negotiation for either conditions of work or even wages. Now, when you look at strike action, the way it is designed, you will find that by the time we reach the dispute, or all internal processes have been exhausted and it goes up to conciliation. So there is measures to ensure that workers are consulted and workers have given mandate. To say the ballot must then be secret is just another way to try and administer and to try and actually meddle in the runnings of trade unions and really prolong workers getting what is due to them.
But wasn't there consultation in this regard? I mean, you have avenues such as NEDLAC. Was this not discussed? Did unions not have any input with regard to this before it became a law?
Look, at NEDLAC level, you will appreciate that the most militant and radical federations and unions, more than 31 of them, are excluded simply because they're only been in existence for 2 years, SAFTU to be quite specific. Now, all this sweetheart federations and sweetheart unions would obviously be happy to sit with the employer and sell out on the workers. The workers have not given a mandate for these laws to be passed. In fact, on the 25th of April, SAFTU waged the biggest strike in post the apartheid regime, where we were vehemently opposing that these laws are just not necessary. In fact, they're there just to frustrate and actually to choke the workers' power.
Mr. Mkhaliphi, with regard to that particular assertion, because the allegation here, the assertion is that this is a class collaboration, as SAF to put it, between government and the employers, and of course what they call sweetheart unions. So what was that engagement about? What sort of concerns were raised during those engagements regarding this particular law, if any?
Well, there were concerns that were raised by Labour at NEDLAC, and those concerns were discussed and debated, but ultimately it was agreed that the law should go on as proposed. And I mean, the last time I checked, Skada, is that Labour were the biggest supporter of democracy. There's no instrument that ensures democratic decision more than a secret ballot. Now, if trade union says that they cannot trust their members to take a decision that they would support on a secret ballot, what does that mean? Because we've seen that intimidation that has taken place. History has shown us this. I mean, we're not making these changes out of thin air. There's evidence, a lot of evidence there that shows the amount of intimidation takes place leading up to a strike. And you want to give workers the opportunity to take decisions that they've applied their mind to.
And I'll give you a chance to respond.
And that democracy at play.
But I just want to hear, more pointedly, Mr. Mkhaliphi, what were the concerns that were raised at NEDLAC regarding this? Well, Labour did raise the issues that Lerato is raising, that it might be difficult to have a secret ballot, it might take the power of workers to the right to strike, it might interfere with that, it might be unconstitutional, and all of those issues, as we said, were checked. I mean, the issues were raised and Labour fought very hard, but I don't want to speak on behalf of what Labour said at NEDLAC. Those who were at NEDLAC at Labour should have been here to indicate what were their concerns and in terms of these issues. But they did fight a very gallant fight, and indicating that it might affect the right of trade union to strike, it might affect their constitutional right to strike. So just in that regard, what was it that actually overrode on your part those concerns that were raised? And also, if you can just weigh in on the constitutionality as you see it with regard to the need for secret balloting.
For us, I mean, the most important issue was to ensure that if strike takes place, it's a strike that is supported by the majority of the workers concerned. And the only way of testing that was to have a secret ballot. The issue of constitutionality, the law was tested on whether it will pass the constitutional muster. And we are confident that any challenge to the Constitutional Court will be defendable.
Now, Lerato, coming to you on the constitutionality of this, because what it does mean is that the unions will have to then alter their constitutions to bring it in line with what the law now requires. But also, I did say I'll give you an opportunity to respond to what Mr. Mkhaliphi had raised about how the process unfolded in chambers at NEDLAC.
Yeah, I think maybe let's start with the constitutionality. We must appreciate that the constitution of our country gives each and every worker the right to strike, and that cannot be scrapped by an amendment that is enforced by the Department of Labour. And I honestly would want us to really have our day in court, because as SAFT, we have said it and we have not minced our words. We will be taking this to the Constitutional Court. We feel that it's serious infringement on the workers' part. And secondly, we are looking at the secret balloting mechanism that they want to introduce, to say, look, how do you begin to do secret votes for a a widespread workers. For an example, if you're looking at people that work in garages, you have, thousands and millions of garages in the country, hospitals, for argument's sake, you would have to struggle to go to each and every individual to get that ballot. So it's really just an administrative nightmare that you are creating so that we don't actually get there. But now, let's maybe go back to what Mr. Mkhaliphi is saying. At NETLEC level, it was vehemently opposed. However, it was blatantly ignored. Obviously, this is a decision that was already made, and the changes that unions have to make in their constitution, like he said when he started, making sure that there's some form of balloting has always been there. Has always been there. But putting the secret ballot element, that's what becomes a problem. Because right now you're actually making the already red-taped way of workers getting what they need, you're actually making it longer. And that's exactly what SAFT is totally against.
What about the concern around intimidation of workers who perhaps do not want to go on strike, but then are forced or coerced in some way by union leadership, for example? What about that concern? How do you respond as trade unions to that?
By the time, Sakina, we get to a dispute level, it means there's a mandate that is given to union leaders by the workers. So
how do you derive that mandate?
That's right. Now, let's say there's an issue in dispute on the table that we are tackling with the employer. It is clear that workers would then have to be engaged at a level that they're able to, through AGMs, through communications, which could be electronic and so forth. And ultimately, when we are able to sit on a round table with the employer, we reach a deadlock, we'll then have to escalate to a point of saying, now we need to call a strike because there is we are not finding each other. At that particular moment, that's when the unions go back to its to its workers and really seek that particular mandate. Balloting still does happen, but it doesn't really have to be in secrecy of any kind. It's in open. And yes, you are right. Workers have a right to strike, but equally there will be those groups that says, but we are not for the strike, or I don't want to be part of the strike. And that right has always been protected. Unfortunately, when you look at strikes in their very nature, because it's a tussle of power between the workers and the employer, you will find that it does, in some instances, get to a point that other workers that don't want to be part of strike feel that they are not allowed to be allowed in
heard.
Because exactly they're not heard. But also those lockouts are also on the side of the employer. Yes, that's right. But in that whole tussle, it's the employer and the unions that needs to really sit down and make sure that we do what is correct, which is listening to the plight of the workers, at the same time not compromising the service delivery or the economics of the employer, because that's their only concern.
And, we did ask this question around this particular matter, the secret balloting, as our question of the day this morning here on Morning Live. And this was our question. What do you make of the new law that prohibits trade unions from embarking on strike action without first conducting a secret ballot to gauge the views of their members? Let's take a look at some of the responses from our viewers this morning. T. Magwa says, that's a good one, because sometimes you'll find the workers are being used just to settle political scores. And I'm saying this because nowadays our union leaders mainly focus on getting government posts, and they're not about championing issues that affect workers. Another one from Nokata, who says, it's about time that it's the workers themselves who decide and not the leaders. Letaba says, morning, the new law will definitely assist and benefit most of us, because trade unions tend to push their own agendas at our expense, claiming to be representing workers without engaging them. Colin says, what will be the point for doing that? Because the very same unions don't bother to go back to ask for members' opinions, but unilaterally take decisions with employers on behalf of those members. IH Nazo says the majority of our workers will comply, but this should also protect workers that have embarked on a strike against those mosquitoes who don't want to take part but want to benefit. The law should stipulate that if you don't strike, then you do not qualify for the benefits of the strike. And Tekelo says the moneyed will always win. This one is from Nsekisang, who says, but where does this law come from? It surely cannot be coming from government. I can't stand unions to begin with. They are in bed with the government and always agree to everything the employer brings to the table. Also, the fact that they always canvass for the governing party. And this one, T. Makwa says, trade unions are just contaminated by politics because unions are supposed to be inclusive to everyone, no matter which race, religion, or even political background. So those are some of the opinions coming through. Very interesting how South Africans who watch this show actually view this particular matter. But I want to first, gauge your response to that, Lerato, as a union leader. People obviously seem to mistrust the union somewhat when it comes to actually getting a mandate from their membership.
The sentiments that are shared in most of those tweets are so true. It's shocking, and it's actually sad that truly trade unionism in its current form has taken a different shape. One of the sentiments that was shared there is that trade union leaders are just there so that they can propel themselves career-wise and find themselves perhaps even in parliament. It's so true. And it's sad because the very same discussion we're having now about this particular law speaks to that. When unions and federations that are affiliated to the ruling party sit with the ruling party and say, yes, we are happy with subjecting workers to a secret ballot, it actually tells you where we are as a country. And we will exclude any opinion of independent trade unions and independent federations that are not in bed with the ruling party simply because they do not share our views. The mushrooming of trade unions and of federations that are becoming more and more independent in our country, it's something that we cannot stop, because as we sit right now, we are infested with trade unions that are not worker controlled, trade unions that really do not really take a mandate, and the distrust that is coming out sharply from the workers, it's actually a genuine picture of what trade unionism has become. It has just become a body with the ruling party, and just making sure that people are positioning themselves correctly so that they can then be parachuted to those positions. That is an unfortunate part.
And a serious indictment at that. But Mr. Mkhaliphi, let's talk to the practicality of what this law will entail. So what are the guidelines for balloting? How should this be done?
In terms of the law, I mean, the law is clear that a ballot must be secret, and a secret ballot can be done even electronically. Therefore, electronic balloting is allowed, and the unions must conduct the secret ballot in terms of its constitution. Its constitution must have a provision dealing with secret ballot, and the law says that that provision must ensure that it's secret. It must ensure that workers who take those decisions are protected. If the process of the union meet those, and as far as we're concerned, if the union can go and get a mandate from its members, it can ballot them. It's the same situation. There's no difference in that. Now, if the union does not want to call its members out, South Africa has got the highest penetration of cell phones. Nothing prevents the union setting up a secret ballot process electronically.
And how will you then be monitoring this? How will you know that they have actually done what they're supposed to do, one? And two, what level of compliance do they need to adhere to? And what I mean by this is in terms of quantifying what percentage of their membership do they need to ballot in order for it to be valid?
Well, just like any other ballot, the decision of the ballot is determined by 50% plus one of those who voted. It doesn't necessarily mean that 100% of union members should ballot. If members are refusing to ballot, those who balloted, even if you've got 1,000 members, only 100 take part, as long as you can show that the ballot was open to all members and it's members who took decisions not to take part in the ballot itself. Therefore, it's a secret ballot on those bases, and 50% plus one determine that. The second issue is that unions are expected in terms of the law, which is the old provision that has been there for years, to keep records. Therefore, the union must keep the record of the secret ballot that they've taken. And then the registrar will be able to demand to see those records, analyze them, and see whether the union has operated in terms of the law or in terms of its constitution if it does not have a constitution that provides for a secret ballot.
And what will be the penalties if the union fails to engage in that secret ballot?
Well, there are two issues in this. If you don't have a ballot at all, a secret ballot at all, you might be taken to court by interested parties and interdicted. It might happen. But in terms of the law, the most punitive measure that can take place, because remember, if you don't have the secret ballot, it means that you're not operating in terms of your constitution, because your constitution must have provision in it that regulates secret ballot. Now, if you don't operate in terms of your constitution, the registrar can deregister your union, and the unions know what are the effect of the registrations.
So, Lerato, what does this mean for you? Because it is now law. What are you going to do? What's your next step?
It is law currently, and it cannot be ignored. But like we have said, our position as SAFTU, we've taken a resolution to say we will challenge this secret ballot notion in the Constitutional Court. Secondly, we will continue to urge members of trade unions that continue to sell them out, not just with the secret ballot. I mean, the minimum living wage of 20 rand is exactly what this team of sweetheart unions and governments sit and agree on. So obviously we will continue to lobby them and say it's time workers punish these unions and really stop supporting unions that are affiliated to political parties. And lastly, as SAFTU, for us, it's important that we continue campaigning and lobbying and continuously making sure that our unions are registered so that we do not give, the employer the leisure of enjoying being just in a honeymoon relationship with those other sweetheart unions.
And then I'm glad we have you from the Young Nurses Indaba trade union as president of this particular union, because you work in an industry that is considered as essential services. And, striking in your particular sector. Talk to us about that.
Look, already this issue of secret balloting becomes a big problem because there are three fundamental things that you are looking at when you are dealing with essential service. Already just indicating that you want to strike, it becomes a problem because you are classified as essential. Now, being essential does not necessarily mean that you cannot enter into a service level agreement through the dispute resolution and get parts of your members to go on a particular strike. But at the same time, you are now adding salt to the wound. We are already disempowered. We already feel raped by the fact that you don't have any power as a worker. And at the same time, when you are working in essential service, you are looking at the fact that it's a quite an intimidating environment that you are not even sure. By virtue of being given an opportunity to say secret ballot, most might not even turn up for that secret ballot because now you are actually putting them on a spotlight. We know by nature or by history that currently where we sit, the intimidation is not only from workers that are on strike. It's actually from the employer himself, making sure that they intimidate the very workers that are militant and radical and trying to make sure that they are addressing their plight. So yes, it's going to be a challenge on top of another challenge for us.
Well, thank you so much to Mr. Thembinkosi Mkhaliphi, Chief Director of Labour Relations in the Department of Labour, and Lerato Madumo Gova, who is President of the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union, discussing this new law issued by the Office of the Registrar of Labour Relations that makes it now illegal to embark on strike action before conducting a secret ballot of members. Let's take a break.